The Rising of the Shield Hero has always been one of those shows where the writing is rather poor, resulting in a poor storyline and awful character writing and development, causing it to be carried by its waifus, animation, and engaging action. So basically just every Marvel movie ever. Season 1 had the aforementioned faults, and it additionally had some glaring pacing issues, but I'm willing to give it a pass because it did need to set up the story and characters as it went along, showing us how the world works and setting up the initial betrayal plot that Shield Goober experiences, which ultimately drives all of Season 1. And it was an overall enjoyable anime despite doing all of that, even if the characters were all idiots and purposely written that way because the author doesn't know how to write, and the fact that Naofumi was an incel for the most of it to boot. The issue with Season 2, however, is that it doesn't need to establish the setting, plot, and characters, and yet despite that, all of its previous issues are exacerbated to the point where even people who love this show are calling it dog shit. The pacing is now even worse as they have entire episodes of nothing but old dudes talking around a table as nothing significant happens in the form of episode 2. Like, come on bro, I can't waifu this. And stretching out about 3 minutes of content into an entire 23-minute episode via long panning shots and reaction shots in the form of episode 4. It's absolutely atrocious, and it's somehow even worse than Attack on Titan Season 4 Part 2's pacing, and that was fucking dog shit. They try to speed through the tortoise arc, supposedly making mini cuts to Rishia's scenes to do so and hindering her character development in the process, but yet they still somehow made it move even slower than a turtle. Yes, that joke was on purpose, fuck you. And made this arc even worse than it already would have been. Season 1 was all about fighting the waves while Shield Goober tried to exact revenge on the kingdom that betrayed him, traveling the lands and fixing the other heroes' fuck-ups in the process, establishing everyone who isn't Naofumi as an idiot, which is really shitty writing, but you already knew that, and that all comes to a climax when he does get his revenge and the wave plotline progresses to the point where you learn that the waves are actually another world fighting for its own survival. It's an intriguing plotline that you want to see followed up on, but then it just serves you up this doo-doo water of an arc instead. It's bad enough that this turtle is something that just comes completely out of left field with next to no foreshadowing whatsoever, but it's made even worse when they also fuck up the pacing on top of that, as although I wasn't expecting much from the writing in the first place, I was at least expecting it to be entertaining. Likewise, the animation is an extreme disappointment for something that was in the works for 3 years. Season 1 didn't look the greatest, sure, and it did have its fair share of bad CG like the giant turtle, but it by and large had more nice Sakuga bits of expressive action animation that felt less stilted than it does in this season. Season 2, and I'd assume by extension Season 3 since they were announced at the same time, did face a lot of production issues behind the scenes, so I suppose it should have been obvious that it was gonna look like shit, but when you combine all these factors together in addition to the already poor character writing, you get the absolute dog shit that is the first 5 episodes of this season. The anime has always been dog shit, but everything before this arc was at least mildly entertaining, whereas this arc feels as if the series just screeches to a sudden halt and any character development there might have been is thrown right out the window because the author was instead too focused writing their slave fetish to be fucked to write anything better. The girls' characters, if you can even call them that, are practically non-existent outside of Rishia's, as they only serve to sing Naofumi's praises and exist as cute waifus to ogle at. Raphtalia does get a few moments dedicated to her character in Season 1, but they're few and far between, and Filo gets diddly fucking squat. Rishia is only currently getting development because she's the newest girl, but I assume that she'll also eventually be thrown to the wayside once her arc is done to be made a pretty waifu to look at and make way for the next girl. Likewise, Shield Goober himself is completely stunted as a character and acts the same as he did in the early parts of Season 1 in this season. He already exhibited fine incel qualities in Season 1, like calling random drawings sluts, or when he's wrongfully accused by the princess of grape with a silent G and forced out of the kingdom, betrayed by everyone in the process, and goes on to extract his revenge, then ultimately being forced to make a decision of actually killing or imprisoning the people who supposedly ruined his life to the point where he couldn't taste fucking food. What a fucking loser. He instead pussies out and just resorts to childish antics like naming her slut because incels are all talk and no bark, making it no surprise in episode 4 of Season 2 when he literally leaves the frame when OST is having doubts and experiencing development as a character because he's too stunted to contribute anything meaningful to her plight, and he's literally been the same character the entire series with only a small bit of growth that he showed at the end of Season 1, which has just been completely undone in this arc, because fuck you, that's why. The villain is also awful in one note this season, even worse than the Pope from season 1, what with his reason for doing all this literally just being, because fuck you, that's why. And he acts exactly like you would expect a poorly written one-note villain to act. The author tries to circumvent this by having him call out the cliches and how they all expect him to act, but being self-aware that he's a shitty villain doesn't make him any less of a shitty villain. It just further cements that the author has the writing skills of a 5th grader, which are only slightly above the average light novel writing skill of a 3rd grader. Additionally, the escalation of events are so bad and trite that it's absolutely laughable when they go, destroy the turtle's head, no wait, destroy the heart, no wait, you actually have to do both at the same time now to get rid of this random barrier to destroy the real core. Bro, you fucking serious? Likewise, it fails on the most fundamental level for an isekai, like almost every other isekai does for that matter, and not making its world feel real and livable. Monogatari, for example, is a character-driven story, and thus it doesn't need to elaborate on its world, as it's just set dressing for the show. But an isekai is all about the wonders of the other world that the main character is reincarnated into. Yet Shield Goober's isekai world just feels like Monogatari's, which is really bad because it's an isekai, and not Monogatari. So I don't feel like two opposing worlds are fighting each other when they tell me that they are. I just feel like one faction is fighting another and the author is telling me it's this massive, large-scale battle, but because their writing is so horrid, it doesn't feel like it, and thus, I don't give a shit. So when you fail on both the character aspect and the world aspect, your story's going to fall flat regardless of what you're trying to tell. Jobless Reincarnation does so well because it has great characters, but also because it makes its world feel vast and lived in and takes its time to make it feel unique, as is the purpose of an isekai story, and it does this all through the background montage scenes and offhanded mentions of world events, which makes it even more impressive. As a result of this, you feel the weight of its world as you would our own, where you question how life on such a beautiful planet with such beautiful sights could be sullied by the selfishness of human conflict. That's what isekai should be making you feel about their worlds, or at the very least, they should have you intrigued about its world's inner workings and vastness as Jobless does, as it effectively uses its first season to take you all around its map and show you many different sites. But Shield Hero doesn't do any of that shit, in addition to also shitting the bed with its pacing, character writing, and storytelling. So of course it's gonna be dog shit designed to appeal to the lowest common denominator who doesn't think whatsoever when they watch media. Which I'm not saying is you, but... However, that said, the show does start to improve in episode 6 of season 2, which is episode 31 overall, but that's 30 fucking episodes later. Most casuals will see the flashy webgen animation and forgive the season for everything, and while it is improved from the rest of the season, it's still just flashy web-generated animation with limited movement. But I will admit that it is nice to look at least when the fucking seizure filters and dimming the screen every 5 goddamn seconds, and it more or less represents what the show should be. A dumb, fun action show with flashy animation and cute waifus who shout out cool lines and have badass moments like Rishiga does, all to some absolute banging music by Kevin Penkin. The story and character writing were always going to be shit, so the dumb fun aspect of it and the animation should carry it to at least allow it to be entertaining, as it was in some parts of the first season. The first 5 episodes of season 2 lacked that, so it was just absolutely horrid to the point where even casuals and devout fans started seeing it for the shit that it was, and I started questioning if I should put a gun in my mouth. But episode 7 goes on to blow everything I just said out of the water in tandem with episode 6, where in the previous episode Shield Goober actually gets some development and isn't just some rageful incel, and one of the side characters does something useful and cool. Episode 7 goes even further and brings back Loli Raphtalia, introduces a new loli, and nerfs the characters to build intrigue while they explore this new world so that there's a sense of danger and urgency, whilst also not feeling like they've forgone the wave plotline like they did with the turtle, as this directly relates to it whilst also relating to the turtle arc that took place prior as well. These episodes are the epitome of, this series would have been decent if it was always like this, and I swear it isn't just because of the lollies. Episode 8 continues this trend and has even more cute loli Raphtalia moments, like when she gets jealous of the new loli or amazes the people with her loli power, clearly indicating that her bigger form was just hiding her true power because she's just so goddamn adorable. Okay, I lied, it's because of the lollies. It takes Shield Hero back back to what made it somewhat enjoyable in the first season, what with Naofumi grinding and learning new things whilst also being a shitbag salesman, using his wit to his advantage, less so than his piss-poor fighting and communication skills that flew out the window in the previous arc, because fuck you, that's why, and is much more of a return to form for the series, but better, with things like Naofumi constantly mashing the B button to keep Raphtalia a loli, because he definitely wasn't going to make the same mistake twice and let her get bigger again. Kyo is still an S-tier villain, what with him trying to be really hard to be an evil shitbag, but just failing monumentally at it and coming off as a boring and poorly written one, but he's the only downside thus far, while the rest of the moments are filled with cute lolis and Naofumi being a silly goober instead of an annoying one. It only took 30 episodes, but the series has finally started to improve and shape itself into something that's entertaining, riding an upward slope, but the downside is again that it took 30 fucking episodes. It doesn't make up for all the other shit you had to wade through in the first season and the first half of the second season, which honestly should have just been a fucking movie, so it can't be considered good from an objective standpoint, and I can't in good faith recommend something that takes 30 episodes to get good, but the fact that it does get better means that you can give it a shot if you hate yourself, or you just want to see Naofumi's thick ass. If you want to see something that doesn't get better, then click this video here.